What exactly is a futurist, and what do they do? To give us that answer and predict what's happening in the future for consumers, business owners and investors, we are joined by business futurist and innovation expert Craig Rispin. Craig, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
It's great to have you here today, and I'm very impressed with how organised and how futuristic you are with your state-of-the-art tablet there. I'm feeling very bad having the old-school paper approach.
Well, it's an example of how media is changing.
That's right, absolutely. So, mate, first question, how do you define a futurist?
Well, it is a real job, you know. You can get a college degree in future studies here in Australia.
Really?
Yeah, but I just say we're reverse historians. Okay. Historians study the past, and so do many economists.
Yeah.
But how many of them take a punt on the future, look at what's happening in the future?
Yeah.
All we do if we're investing all the time, don't we?
A lot of guys in the finance market taking
That's
a
right.
punt on the future every day.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
So are they looking at the long-term trends that are going to impact their portfolio?
Absolutely.
Are they investing in the right area? And I don't know if they always are.
No, look, I'm sure you're most definitely right there. So what does an average day look like?
Well, I'm connected to a global community. There's 25,000 of us.
25,000 futurists?
Yes,
wow.
The World Future Society.
Yep.
So if you look up the World Future Society, you'll find our website. It's
yep.
all the professionals there. They're academics, they're work in government, and I connect with them. Every day I open up my iPad, I open up an application called Flipboard, and all the latest research.
That was one of the leading apps in the
Yes.
in the App Store about 2 years ago. I think
Yes.
it was the #1 app.
Yeah, and now it's online as well. It's a web app as well as an app on your mobile device.
Sure.
And I get all the latest research from the top 600 futurists come in as my morning paper. And so I'm reading that with my cup of coffee, and usually have to head off to the airport to speak at a conference around lunchtime or so.
Okay.
And then every week or so, I have a mentoring group where I advise chief executives where their investments should be going.
So that was my next question. How do you make money being a futurist?
Well, speaking at conferences, so
Yep.
I advise about 50 different industry groups every
Yep.
year. So the head of medical technology group will invite me to talk about emerging medical technology trends,
Yep.
or the head of financial services group will
Sure.
say, tell us how the consulting advice is changing.
So what are the big themes that you think will have an impact on businesses in the next 5 years?
Yeah, so we're already seeing the start of a 40-year cycle in this thing that we're calling the Internet of Things, or the Internet of Everything, where you're seeing that every device, your television, your watch, your mobile device, they all have these IP addresses. And because they've got very significant, very sophisticated sensors built into them, they can be remote sensing and send us data, and we can connect to that data and overlay it in the real world.
Yep.
And this is one of the major trends that's going to impact business, whether you're talking about in a corporate environment or even in retail now. There's a lot of applications in retail.
So obviously there's been the smartphone, the tablet, obviously
Yes.
the desktop computer. There's a lot of talk now about the watch.
Yeah, so that's an example of the thing.
Yeah.
That's really not a computer, it's not a mobile, it's this little thing.
Yeah.
And if you go to the Apple Store, all sorts of things. You see initially...
Apple don't have a watch yet, though, do they?
They don't. They don't. Samsung came out first.
Yep.
They wanted to jump the gun.
Yep.
They thought Apple was going to come out this last year. But they got theirs out first. It hasn't been overly well received as a device.
Yeah.
But if you go into the Apple Store, retail store now, about 25% of all the gadgets that you can get to go along with your iOS devices or your Mac there, about 25% of all the store space is now taken up by these things, these gadgets, these extra things.
Yeah.
So for instance, there's an application in healthcare where you could swallow a pill, and if you don't take your pill on a certain day, it'll report to your phone, you haven't taken your pill today.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect example of the Internet of Things.
Yeah. There appears to be a lot of trends or a lot of change, or a lot of embracing, I should say, of technology in the food industry. It's probably been the industry that hasn't embraced technology, say, compared to media and healthcare and financial services. But that appears to be a new trend coming through. Do you have any comments on that?
Oh, sure. I think it's much bigger than you actually expect.
Yeah.
There are, here in Australia, quite significant hydroponic plants where you see them growing food in highly sophisticated, much more efficient, where you've got focused light, powered by solar energy, robotic systems, and drip feeding. And now this technology has been around for 60 years, and we're moving to aeroponics, where they don't even feed the roots direct water. They just spray mist on the plants, and they grow even better. And it's 100 times more efficient. And we're seeing in country areas, so you don't hear about it in the city, in country areas, major investments coming in a lot from overseas. We see a lot of big investments from China.
In the food?
In the food industry, so,
yes. So we're looking at it from the perspective of business and, I guess, in investors. What sort of changes or trends could you say predict in some sectors? So let's take one, for example, the retail sector.
Yeah, the retail sector. You're going to see the emergence of, well, here's a perfect example. Your previous guest was talking about the coupon, where people are trying to order something online and they see a discount. Well, with the Internet of Things, you could plug in a little tiny device into the back of one of these flat screens, just plugs into USB for power, and it's called an iBeacon. And as I walk by that screen, it could play an ad just for me. It knows it's Craig Rispin walking by because I've given it permission on my phone. So I could walk by the front of a retail store and it could play an ad just for me because it knows that I like purple jackets. So it's going to show me a purple jacket and maybe offer me a coupon right there on the spot, and so that'll drive me into retail. And so you can see this is happening with retail. And it's interesting, it's not just retail. You see it's happening in the automotive industry. A recent Ford executive said that he bought a $100,000 car when the first iPod came out just because he wanted to connect his iPod. And here we are. All these years later, the iPod came out in 2007, and now Ford has got this new car that is a very connected car and also powered by solar panels.
Last night on the show we had Martin Grunstein who talked about the benefits of value adding, and I think that example that you made there about the Ford motor car and the exec buying it because of the iPod is an example of them, Ford, getting value adding right.
That's right, and they just announced at the Consumer Electronics Show, where this is the Consumer Electronics
Show. In Vegas? Is that
in Vegas,
annual conference?
It's happening right now in Vegas, and they just announced a car at a Consumer Electronics Show because they consider a car as a gadget that you'll use with your mobile device.
So what about media? What sort of trends do you think will be happening in the next 5 years?
Big report on media out of the U.S. We haven't had a similar study, but a big one with hundreds of thousands of respondents that I don't think you'd find this surprising, that 34% of under 29-year-olds get all or most of their media online, not live broadcast. This is a third of the market have moved to online, where they essentially do their own TV program and they watch when they want, what they want, where they want, on what device.
And are they owning a TV? Because I saw some stats too that did say that the penetration of the actual distribution device was decreasing.
It is. You can see that the screens that we're getting in homes now, if you count the number of screens, these second screens, we're not talking about second screens. Whenever I speak at a conference, I say, how many screens do you have in your household? And I say, sit down if you have less than 10. And there's always people there that have 10, 12, 15 screens. But they're not necessarily TV screens. They're these devices. And now merging this device with a TV screen, imagine if you could take this information and overlay it onto augmented smart TV. So something just announced in Las Vegas at Consumer Electronics Show is Air TV, in-air TV, and it takes the data that you might be looking up here at the Internet Movie Database and overlays it on the film that you're watching in an augmented reality way, or it might be a documentary. And you can see that you can get that with 3D glasses. You can see the merging of these screens in the households.
Financial services, the digital wallet seems to be a pretty I know in Silicon Valley, I've done a lot of reading on what's going on there. There's a real big push to sort of own that digital wallet space.
Yes, and a lot of that technology.
What does that mean, the digital wallet, for the viewers out there?
It means it's stored value, so like a travel card. It's like a travel card. Your previous guest was talking about. You store some value on it, but instead of storing it on a card, you store it on your mobile device. And many technologists thought that this technology, NFC, near-field communication, was going to be the technology, but now most of the technology experts, the futurists who work in this area, say this iBeacon, the one that can recognize you as you walk past that store, could also be used for commerce. And Apple's already doing this in their stores.
So can you tell us something that we don't know about the future?
Sure. I think you would know.
Probably a lot of things.
Well, I thought I'd just choose one. I bet you don't know that doctors are prescribing apps instead of pills these days.
Doctors, so apps on an iPad?
Apps on an iPad or on your iPhone. So imagine that you're a pre-diabetic. You might get type 2 diabetes. Imagine if you could have an app that tested your blood sugar and you could decide what you're going to eat and then get instant feedback on that, how that affected your blood sugar. So there are many doctors now that are prescribing apps instead of drugs. You could avoid having drugs if you have the right app. And it's a perfect example. It goes back to that 25% of the Apple Store that's all these Internet of Things, these devices. And I would ask you, is your doctor prescribing apps for you?
Not yet. But hopefully that means I'm pretty healthy. But you can definitely see that the trend is most definitely on the way. And some of the valuations that some of these app companies are selling for in Silicon Valley at the moment are quite incredible. And Apple just bought a camera app which they couldn't build themselves.
Yeah.
I think it was $50 million. It was at...
an Aussie, an app developer of one.
Correct, an Aussie, yeah, that's right.
Melbourne-based expert. And he figured out a new way to do video compression, so you could shoot a lot of photos very, very fast. He essentially was a brilliant mathematician that applied it to JPEG images, so you could shoot 30 images in a second. Yeah.
Absolutely. And as a futurist, can you predict what the stock market will do in 2014?
No, that's not my area. I'm not a stock market futurist, but I can say overall trends that we're seeing. So, for instance, if people look at their portfolios, I would say that most portfolios do not have enough technology in them. Facebook, Yahoo are all over 100% returns last year. But if I ask them, do you have Facebook shares? They're up 111%. Many investors say to me, I don't have Facebook. I thought that was a bit of a risk. So the one that I'm really looking forward to, the IPO that I think that I would recommend to my friends and family, I don't make personal investments on this, a Dropbox. Do you know about Dropbox?
Dropbox, yes. Absolutely.
Widely popular application, works on mobile devices.
Are they profitable at the moment?
They're approaching $1 billion in revenue. So.
Look, thank you very much for coming to the show, and look forward to talking again in the very near future. Thank you very much, Craig.
Thanks, Marty.
After the break, regular Switzer guest will tell us where the sectors are going in 2014, so stay tuned.